Greetings, my friends, and welcome to Claying Outside the Box. We're going to go outside the box today by integrating some mixed media, and resin is one of the best ways to get your feet wet with mixed media. I've used found objects, the resin, some Sculpey Premo clay, and I made a couple of test cabochons to see what I like. This one is done with the Sculpey bezel mold and the Sculpey cabochon mold. You can use any molds that you have. It's all really fun. I like the fact that this is poured in two separate pieces because I was able to put some black glitter into the resin for the bezel, and now I've got something that, is translucent. I could use it for one of those sun catchers like that one down in the corner, and I could use it for jewelry or decorating boxes or all kinds of things. So today we're going to learn how to make cabochons with resin, and I think it's a lot easier than you might think it is. I put my resin bottles in a bowl of warm water before I start because cold resin is one of the only things that makes it hard to set up and hard to blend. So it doesn't have to be boiling hot or anything. And those are the two parts. So you saw me pour a little bit in the first, and see how that's a little amber there on that second one, that part B? It's very common for part B to have a tight, just a slightly amber cast, okay? So that doesn't mean it's going to be bad or it's not going to be clear. See how it's swirly when you first start stirring it? Well, they always tell you stir it this long or stir it that long. Stir it till it's not swirly anymore. It doesn't look icy, it doesn't have that appearance. And you'll see the difference when it starts to just be clear. Now it's still got bubbles in it, from stirring, but it doesn't have those swirls anymore in it. And that's the most accurate description I can give of resin that's ready to pour. So I'm going to take my cabochon mold, because that's the one I used for the bracelet. But as I said, there's a world of molds out there. It's really fun. And I'm going to partially fill this. I'm going to leave enough room so that I can sprinkle a few things in there without it overflowing and then add a little bit after. So that I would say that's about 2/3 full. And you're keeping it on a paper towel and making sure it doesn't get all over your hands and stuff. So once it's poured in like that, you can start adding inclusions. And the ones I'm using today are just, they're kind of an obsession with me. This mechanical pixie dust is actually little tiny screws, nuts and bolts, and gears that are that small. Well, I sprinkle them in at the end, and I'll show you how I do that. But I think you'll really like the way that they look as kind of a background. You can use them for a lot of things. These are Christy Friesen's embellish bits. They come in little packages of quite a variety. And when you put them into your mold, just, settle them down. They're all going to fall toward the center of a dome shape like this, okay? So don't worry about that. They look fine. Just make sure none of them are all haywire and crazy or off to one side too much. Then I'm just going to fill it almost the rest of the way, and I'm going to sprinkle in my little tiny mechanical pixie dust. And yeah, I know. But I'm going to put that in there, and then when I get finished with my cabochon, those little pieces are kind of magnified. I'm showing you this because, it's hard to mix up a small enough batch of resin. And actually, after time, I don't even want to make it super small, just for one tiny thing, because it's so fun to experiment with it. So what I'm doing with this is putting in some of this gorgeous fine glitter. And it makes these, I don't know, they remind me of that kind of rock that's sparkly. I can't remember what it's called, but it makes a really, really pretty cabochon. So I'm going to stir that up in there. It's not too scientific, just kind of get it stirred up. And you can pour that in your molds too and make all kinds of pretty accents with it. I think it's called goldstone. Yeah, you guys probably know about rock, goldstone. Okay, so I'm going to pour that in there and make myself a few things to play with. And that way, since I've mixed up the resin and it's a nice texture, and I know it's going to set up well because it's of my ratios, I don't have to go mix up some more just to get these few little pieces. So resin, to review, make sure it's not cold, make sure that you measure carefully, and really that's all you have to do. I think you're going to really like it. So I was crazy about that black glittery bezel, so I'm going to make myself a gold glittery bezel too. And a little donut. I'm going to set those aside. So, you know, you kind of just have to forget about two-part resin. I know it's not fast, but what can you do? This is a cuff blank, a metal one from my store. I'm going to leave it in, which I very rarely do. It's got a strip on the thickest setting, and it's got a strip on each side. And that's Premo Accents Yellow Gold Glitter clay, which I love. And I made a test out of it, and I do this every time, and I just super recommend that you do it. I took my yellow gold glitter, I put a stamp in it, I put some depth, that's the color of the Surface Effects by Christy Friesen, that's called depth. Anyway, I put that over it. You could use any color that you want to. And I baked it and glazed it, and I know now that I'm really going to like this look and that I'm really going to get what I'm after. So always make tests. Ooh, is right. This is Mechanical Organical. It's a really nice texture collection. I cut mine apart. You guys don't have to if you don't want to, but I like to cut the sheets into little manageable pieces that I can press where I want to press them. So I just cut around the design, you know, make sure you don't, you know, lose any of it, but I just cut around the design, and then I can mash them onto things, you know, kind of one at a time. You just want to get a nice deep impression, take your time. Now you would think this would totally trash the inside of the bracelet, but it really doesn't. It's on there pretty well. It's a thick enough piece, and you'll see it's not too hard to do. And you know, you say, oh, well, why didn't you, you know, make the impression beforehand? I don't know. I tried it that way. It wasn't any easier. So do it the way you want to do it, because in the end, we'll just settle it down anyway. And make sure that your edges are flat. Be looking around for a nice texture for the sides there. The edges there of the bracelet look really cool when they've got something on them, especially for this kind of a, you know, retro style. So I'm going to use my Etch and Pearl tool to add some texture to the top, and be thinking about what would be the nicest texture for the sides too. And what I usually use for that is a script kind of stamp. You want something kind of small and busy for the sides, so that the dents or impressions in the sides don't end up looking kind of accidental. So you'll see the stamp I use for that. You settle it down. It's flattened out. You know, it's really not damaged on the inside or anything. You just want to make it, you know, be kind of straight again. And then put your chosen stamp on those edges. And then it looks really cool the way it captures the mica powder later on. And see what I mean by kind of a busy stamp? Kind of a lot of small impressions are good on edges. If they're big, they just don't show. And you know, I don't know where I got that. I love that stamp. It might have even been an older Sculpey stamp, but I think I've used it about 1,000 times. So you want to settle it back down, make sure everything's the way you want it, and you just need to bake it for a first bake for 30 minutes, because it'll be baked again when the second part's added. And before you do that, you want to get your patina on there. You want to get your mica powder on there like we did in the little test, and that's where our strength comes in. This is really pretty. I've used it a lot because it looks completely different every time I use it on every different color of clay. And it comes in the Metalicious collection. And you'll see that on Christy's site. You know, as I always say in these videos, you can get large jars of mica, and they're not a bad value at all. But the thing is, now you've got like so much of one thing. And I like to get the little ones because now I've got all different ones to use. And with the quantity and the scale that we work in, you know, it would take us a long time to use a little one. So that's why I always recommend them to you. And also I love Christy, and I want us to have her stuff because she's my friend. So I put it on there. I'm going to bake it up. And that's going to set it really quite well. In the meantime, I've got an opportunity to make my centerpiece. And I probably could have told you earlier, but I used a piece of scrap in that same mold, okay, to make a little dome to make a cabochon. And I did that because now I can fool around with my scrap one while I'm waiting for the other one to cure for one thing. And I'm going to have the size exactly the same because it was made in the same mold. So I spritzed it with some water, and I'm going to put it in the middle of that little strip. And that strip is going to go across the top of the bracelet and form the area where we're going to put our cabochon and our glass fuses. Now listen, you don't have to have fuses. I mean, I bet you got all kinds of stuff laying around that would look really cute, you know, wired up in there. But I'm just going to show you how today, so that if you want to do fuses, you know, you can. I just had a couple laying there, and I kept wanting to put them in something, and that's why this bracelet design sort of floated up. But anyway, make your impression in there and trim it with a little placeholder still in there like that. You know, you can make placeholder type scrap cabs in all of those holes, all the different sizes, and they really come in handy for projects. It's really neat to have that to use. I'll show you what I did with these fuses. I'm going to show you 2 times because I see that in reviewing this film that the first time you couldn't really see anything. But what I did is I just took a head pin and cut off the head. It could be an eye pin. And I bent it in such a way that I could embed it into the clay. So you see it's a U shape, just bent right around the glass fuse. And those metal ends, you know, are going to keep it from sliding outward. And I just pressed it in there, and I'll show you closer now. This will be better. I took the wire, and you can do this with anything. You know, all the stuff you find around the house. It's really cool to make little brackets for it, because then, you know, you have so much more opportunity to be creative and to embed things in your, you know, in your work. So once you have it wrapped around like that and you got a good fit, then you just pinch it, see, with your pliers. And then it forms that shape that's really, really a good fit on there, see? And then you just bend the legs up to the sides, and believe me, it's not going anywhere. It really makes a nice deep seat into the clay. And we're going to not just embed it a little bit, but cover it with little clay screws that we're going to make. So by the time you do that, you know, it's pretty secure. I still have this bracelet. It's really strong. I'm going to cut off the legs so that they don't extend beyond the little clay strip, see? And you'll see all that when you're doing it. It's not as hard to do as it is to explain. So you just leave them on there. You don't have to take them back off or anything. And we'll get ready to put it into the clay. I was surprised at how inexpensive glass fuses are. You know, I like to put them in everything. I wish I could put stuff inside them. Maybe I'll figure that out. So I'm going to squish that down in there just like that. And make sure that it's symmetrical. And now I've made these little tiny balls, and they're going to be the screws. So I just want a dot of adhesive. I'm using Weldbond. It's kind of like a strong white glue. I've been pretty happy with it. It's at Hobby Lobby and Walmart, but I didn't see it at Michael's. And now, if I can ever get them off my fingers, I'm going to just drop those little tiny balls on the ends where the brackets are. See? And then I'm going to press them down and make them look like screws. So you make 8 of those little balls, 4 brackets, 8 balls, 2 fuses, 1 cabochon. But as you can imagine, you could be putting any kind of accents on there that you can find. I want to do a lot more of these. It's been super fun. You know, steampunk, not everybody likes steampunk, but, you know, I was thinking about all the beautiful glass beads and charms and things that there are. You know, I guess you could make it any style that you want to. I think this really sparkly clay really lends itself to this design, the way it comes up through the texture. And I think you could use that with any style too, so, you know. I've seen your imaginations. I see your work every day online. I love the things that you come up with. I'd like to do one with dragonflies. I'd like to do one with bees, flowers. So at this point, when you've got all 8 of the little balls in there, I'm going to take my favorite little Phillips screwdriver. You know, the kind you do glasses with and stuff would probably work. But this small one has been my buddy for a long time. And I'm going to make the impression of a Phillips screw. And what really sells this look is the mica powder on top of the screws. So when you put it on, just, you know, be a little bit careful it doesn't slop all over the place. But if you get some on the parts where you don't want it, just remember a Q-tip and some alcohol is really your friend in a project like this where you're just putting mica in a very small spot. You can always just take it back off. I wouldn't bake it on though if I were you, because a baked on excess mica is kind of hard to get off. So I'm just using a Q-tip and putting the smallest amount of the strength, the same surface effects color, over my screws. And I think they look really cute. People usually ask me where I got such, you know, tiny little screws, and I'm like, well, it's clay. Once those are done, get ready to attach that to our bracelet. Our cabochons are cured. I think they turned out really pretty. You see this one doesn't have any clear coat on it yet. So what the deal is the back side of these is going to be really shiny because it just has nothing there. The front side of them is going to be a little bit frosty looking, which I really like for some projects. And that's because of the texture of the molds. But when you put clear coat over them, it doesn't matter what kind of texture they start with. You put clear coat over them, they're going to get that shiny look. So that's up to you. You're going to do different projects, different styles. But any kind of mold that has that matte texture will give you a matte cabochon. So see how this one that we poured is frosty on top, shinier on the back. Well, we're going to put clear coat over this one when we clear coat the rest of the bracelet, because we want to see through this one. We want it to be transparent, and any clear coat will render it transparent. I don't really recommend any one clear coat. I'm always testing, and I know you guys are too. So I don't have the answer to that question. I have tried them all, and they all have different properties. So I'm going to pop that in there. I'm not worried about the transparent yet because I've got other things to do with this. I'm going to take this scrap, and what I did with it is I made a little snake. So I'm going to put the cabochon in the way I want it and use my Weldbond glue on that. It dries nice and clear, and it doesn't affect the design at all. You can't even tell it's there. I keep my glue in a small jar like that because I don't like, you know, the big giant bottle of Weldbond being on my work surface, but that's the only reason it's in that little jar. And make sure that I've got that in there well. On a project like this, you know, take your time, go for strength and security on the end product, because this is way too much work to have anything be popping off or popping out or breaking off. That just drives me crazy, you know, when that happens to me, and I know you don't like it. So I'm going up on those edges. I'm making sure that I really know that everything's been done to secure my cabochon. And in addition to that, I'll be putting that ring on there and forming a bezel, that little snake. That's in there. I'm pressing it and making sure it's nice and tight. You'll like the spring back of this clay, by the way. It's kind of got a rubbery texture, and it really lends itself to projects like this. All the Premo accents, metallics, and glitters have a really great flexibility and strength to them. I think you'll like. Now I'm going to dot my Weldbond around the edge where I'm going to lay that snake. I'm going to be careful not to get excess onto the cabochon. And you know, these are the Zen moments, you know, when you get down in your design to the point where you're really being careful and you're really guarding it and you're really doing a beautiful job. That's when, you know, for me, that's when all the alpha waves start floating through my brain. And I just love the feeling of concentration, taking your time. So fast projects really don't even interest me anymore. So you're seating that well, you're making sure it's right around in a nice symmetrical circle, and that it's trimmed off. Now I'm going to go back and give it a little bit of texture after it's pressed down. Right on top of the glue, not forming any gaps any place. And then just made some dots so that it would catch the light. Now I'm using a pencil because I like the little ring shapes that it makes. But I bet you've got all kinds of things you like to use. Now here's a little tip for you. So you've got your baked bracelet, and I'm just removing a little bit of that mica powder. Because you know, mica powder doesn't stick to anything. It doesn't stick to your glue and your rhinestones, or, you know, it's really slippery like talcum powder. So you want to remove that before you put anything on top of it. And by using a nail file or a little piece of sandpaper, you've given it a tooth to secure that strip. So you're really on the home stretch here. I'm just putting a nice coating of glue on there. And on it will go my little thing that we made. And it will go back in the oven. So yes, the fuses can bake. Yes, the resin can bake. Doesn't hurt them at all. And that was something I was happy to find out. This one's got different pieces put in it. I also put a signature cane on the inside of that one. I think I did them both that way. So if you got a signature cane, go ahead and stick it on the inside. And a little bit more Weldbond, may as well do it now while you're working with it. And sign it for time and all eternity there. I haven't made a signature cane yet this year, but that's definitely on the list. It's just a really fun way to sign your work. If you don't want to do a cane, you could also get letter stamps. There's all kinds of things you can do to sign your work, but I really recommend that you do. So that's about as far as it's going to go. It's looking good. I love it. It's now going to go into the oven for 30 to 45 minutes. A lot of people like to bake for an hour. Why not? So there it is, finished. I've put clear coat over all of it, including the cabochon. I've sealed my mica powder on there. And see, with the metal left inside of it, you don't need findings on the outside either. You don't need to like drill it and put chain or anything, because it really fits beautifully. It sits right where it's supposed to on your wrist. So I hope you enjoyed this. You know, I loved making this. Come see me at Tiny Pandora if you need some cuff blanks. You might already have some, and enjoy. See you next time.